today. As we continue to make it through the dog days of summer, in which the UFC sporadically gives us a good card and sporadically gives us. They don't really have any bona fide stars at the moment, except for maybe Ilya, but still, they try to claim that certain people are stars, but we know the difference by our excitement. Nevertheless, we are trying to make it through the dog days of summers, and this Saturday is the next Apex card. Fluffy Hernandez, Roman Dolidze. That's right. That's what we working with. No shade to Fluffy. All of this and more on today's episode of Matter of Fact MMA. What's up? What's happening? Let's go. What's up, guys? We right back at it. We right back with it. It's your boy Matt as I scratch my nose, and we are here to go over the next UFC Apex installment going down this Saturday, where in the main event, Fluffy Hernandez will step in the octagon with Roman Dolidze. Before I get into that fight, I just want to say, shout out to us. Who's us? Us are fans of Matter of Fact MMA, but also us are fans of the UFC, are fans of mixed martial arts. Shout out to us, right? Because we are trying to make it. We trying to pull through. We trying to trudge through. You know what I'm saying? But it's an uphill battle. It's a struggle. You know what I'm talking about? Let's just bring you up to speed. ONE FC don't even count anymore, right? Like ONE FC, bro, ONE FC don't even matter anymore. At this point, you know, the local bingo hall here in Louisville, Kentucky sees more traffic than a one show. Whether you watching or, whatever. If you live there in the various places that they have their cards, like in Singapore, places like that, if you live there, it packed. It's packed in the arena. But if you watch it on TV, look, it's tumbleweeds and echoes rolling through there. You know what I'm saying? So nevertheless, that's it for one. PFL is trying. You know what I'm saying? PFL is that cousin that you got that flunked out of high school. There's no GED. There's no diploma. The fool can barely read, so he can't hold a job. And he's just barely getting by, you know what I'm saying? Every now and then he hits you up. He borrows $20 here, $5 there, $10 there. Yeah, that's the type of dude he is. He's only borrowing $5, and you still don't get that back. That's kind of where PFL is. Like, PFL is a full-blown struggle fest right now. You know what I'm saying? It's struggle mania off in that mofo right now, right? I mean, the fighters that they have that are extremely talented, they can't get fights. They want out of the contract. Don Davis and the PFL coach, whoever they got over there, they don't want to let them out. They don't have nobody for him to fight. Poor Francis Ngannou, when he's not dodging, bad things in the media, he can't get a fight, which furthers my sentiment a few years ago of, yeah, he got paid, but, you might as well retire at this point because there ain't nothing else left for you to do in the PFL, which is why those of us were singing, you should have stayed in the UFC. I know you made your money. Great on you, but now where you at? You know what I'm saying? So the PFL's a struggle. And the UFC, bro, I mean, there ain't nobody else outside of them. So let's just get that. GFL, you do better watching bare knuckle boxing. There's no shade to bare knuckle boxing because they be bringing the heat every now and then. But there just ain't nothing popping for MMA fans at the moment. You know what I'm saying? And so you're looking at it, and as a UFC fan, you're struggling. You're struggling. The stars, the remaining ones that haven't retired yet, they either on various forms of snow, like Conor McGregor, they're like Izzy. They don't really know who they can fight that's in the top 10, top 15 that they can even beat. So they just holding on, just hanging in there. They don't know what fight to take. You know what I'm saying? You got Guys like Ilya, who are strategically moving through their career, he's the closest thing they got to a star, but he's strategically moving through. You got the UFC in a year in which they're trying to ink a new streaming platform deal, so they're withholding the biggest fights to try to make a splash on whatever new platform they're going on. And we know this, and they don't want to admit this, but we know this. So there's just not a lot going on at the moment. John Jones took us on a tirade, a charade, and every other type of raid for the last 2.5 years. So there's nothing happening now. Now Tom Aspinall, he got to fight old Cyril Gane, as if we trying to see that. You know, Cyril Gane's one of them fighters. There's no shade to him. He's an extremely good fighter, especially for a heavyweight. Really good fighter. But there's just, at this point, bro, we done seen it all. You know what I'm saying? We seen you versus Francis, which arguably Francis fought you on one leg and you should have beat him, and you couldn't. We seen you against John, who was 3 or 4 years out of the cage, probably not that long, but still. And you couldn't do nothing. You had a couple of seconds you lasted against him. And it's like, at this point, if Cyril Gane retired tomorrow, nobody's going to be like, oh man, Cyril Gane retired. Oh, man. Nobody's going to do that, right? Nobody's going to do that. So it's like, there's just not, we trying to hang in there, but there's not a lot going on. We got Dricus versus Hamzat to look forward to, but we got Islam Makhachev versus Jack Della at some point to look forward to, but there's just not a lot going on at the moment, to the point where the UFC is touting and trying to hype up a card at the White House to go down in July of 2026. That's the point that we at. We've been talking about that card since July of this year, right? Since last month. We might have started talking about it at the end of June. That's how bad things are at the moment. Now, I know that the UFC's got, they trying to do some big things later this year, but again, they won't cop to nothing. They won't tell you nothing. They don't really believe in a lot of promoting anymore. So, as an MMA fan, this is tough times. This is bottom of the barrel. This is as low as it gets. However, we are still hanging in there. We got to find the excitement where we can find the excitement. And with that being said, let's dive off into this Apex card that goes down this weekend there in Las Vegas, the world famous Las Vegas Apex Arena. Yeah, I called it an arena. Let's get into it. The main event, Fluffy Hernandez steps in the octagon with Roman Dolidze. This fight at middleweight. Man, look, dude. What do you want me to say? Let me just be completely and totally honest. Fluffy Hernandez is that dude. Fluffy Hernandez is that dude. But Fluffy Hernandez falls in a certain caliber, if you want to call it that, a certain class, a certain type of UFC fighter. And what that type is it's a fighter that hasn't broken through to the mainstream, where mainstream fans would know who he is. He's a fighter that doesn't necessarily have the absolute most action-packed fights where he's a must-see fighter that you have to see. Even though I find a lot of his finishes to be very action-packed, he's just not really that yet, right? But he's also a fighter that could go in there, and I'm not going to throw any smut or any shade on Dricus du Plessis' name, but Fluffy Hernandez is one of those fighters that on any given day, you kind of feel like there's a good chance he could beat the champion. And that's a weird place to be in, because when you're in that place, generally the UFC makes you rack up like close to 15 straight wins before you get a title shot, because they know the fan base, the casuals, they're not checking for you, right? They know the action fans that just love a good scrap, just a good dog fight, they're not checking for you, right? So that puts him in a really weird position, right? Then Roman Dolidze, on the other hand, what are we doing with Roman Dolidze? Roman Dolidze is a talented fighter. He is that, right? I'm not going to say he's trash, right? But at the same time, he just doesn't move the needle. you're not checking for a Roman Dolidze fight. Maybe there was a little bit of hype when he first came into the UFC and he was racking off wins, rattling off wins. But at the same time, them days are over. They in the past. So with that being said, Roman Dolidze, you're not really checking for him. Roman Dolidze is not the most action-packed fighter. Yeah, he's got stoppages, Yeah, he can knock somebody in the next week without a problem. But with his fights, I'm not even going to say he's low fight IQ because I really don't feel like he is. I feel like he's talented. It's just his fights don't play out in an action-filled or action-packed way. He's had some good action fights. I'm not going to deny him of that. But you can't bet on it. You can't bank on it that you're going into a Roman Dolidze fight and you're going to see action. You're going to see knockouts or stoppages. You just don't really know what you're going to get. Number 3, he can be inconsistent. Sometimes he can look really good. Early in his career, at points he somewhat looked like a world beater the way he was dismantling guys. But he's inconsistent. Sometimes he's got to go in there. He's got to grapple. He's got to keep taking you down or at least trying to hold you down. He's got to have more of a grapple-centric, grapple-heavy style to try to just trudge his way to a decision win, right? I mean, I think I'm pretty fair for both fighters. Now, with that being said, I like Hernandez, straight up. Not going to knock him at all. I like Hernandez. That's why I say he's one of those guys that's talented, that has had action fights, but he's just not known for that. But unfortunately, the fan base, the regular casuals, they're not necessarily checking for him, but to give him his props. And I'm a huge Dricus du Plessis fan, so I'm not going to say he could beat Dricus. But for a lot of, he's just one of those fighters that he got a good chance of going out there and winning the championship if he was given the opportunity. With that being said, I got Anthony Hernandez to go out there and win in the main event and defeat Roman Dolidze. I mean, how's it going to happen? I don't really know because, one thing about Anthony Hernandez is he could definitely be inconsistent with how he's going to fight a fight. His last fight was more grapple heavy, and he had a few moments, but he was like, I didn't come in here 100%, and I had to do what I had to do to get that decision win. So with that being said, either 5-round decision or submission victory. That's all I got for you on that main event, man. This is kind of where we at. Let's move on to the co-main event. What you want for this? Steve Erceg versus Ode Osbourne. Once again, Ode Osbourne, inconsistent. You never know what you're going to get out of him. I wouldn't say he's a trash fighter. I wouldn't say he's the most talented fighter, but he's inconsistent. Steve Erceg started out with a bang, made his way to a flyweight championship, to a title shot. Didn't look that, actually, almost took Pantoja to the limit. He looked great against Pantoja. Some people feel like he beat Pantoja. I feel like Pantoja slightly edged that one out. But nevertheless, at this point in Steve Erceg's career, you don't know what you're going to get. The last few times we've seen him in the octagon, he hasn't looked like that Steve Erceg that earned the title shot or fought the champion. So what do you want from me here? You know what I'm saying? What do you want from me? I'm going to lean towards Steve Erceg. He's looking to get back in the win column. He's looking to bounce back. I got Steve Erceg in this. But what do you want? How about this? Let's just talk about the main card real quick. How about this? Yasmin Lucindo stepping in the octagon with my girl Angela Hill, the vet, still out there, still getting it done. Off a win over Souza, who just fought last week. Bro, what do you want from me? I mean, there's definitely a world where Lucindo's trying to get back out there in the win column. And she goes out there and she does her thing. She leans more into the grappling. She leans more into, moving towards submissions. She leans more toward heavy top pressure and keeping Angela Hill grounded. That's always been Angela Hill's weakness. Now here, as within the last year and a half, Angela Angela Hill's been showing y'all that she's been working on the grappling, working on the wrestling defense, working on the takedown defense and everything. So, what do you want to say here? Because Angela Hill's one of those fighters when you really get to believing that, okay, Angela's still out here doing her thing, man. She's still doing her thing. She could have a slight hiccup in a fight, you know what I'm saying? And go out there kind of, maybe have a little bit too much movement, a little bit too much striking in the first round. First half of the second round, she looks solid, but she starts to kind of waver, starts to get a little bit tired. The second half, last half of the second round, and then the third round, the same thing, and she loses by decision. So this is very, very tricky. Smart money says you bet on Lucindo, but the fan in me, I'm going along with Angela Hill to go out there and get the win. I don't feel solid about that. Shout out to Angela Hill if you ever see this video. I'm a huge fan of yours, always have been. I hope you go out there and get the job done. I'm picking Angela Hill to go out there and get the win. How about this? My guy, Andre Touchy Feely back in the octagon against Christian Rodriguez. Now, this to me is going to be a fight. Because one thing about Christian Rodriguez is you never know. Christian Rodriguez, bro, C-Rod. This man goes out there. And one thing about this man, if he's in there against an up-and-comer, if he's in there against somebody that the UFC is putting stock in, that they get him behind, that the fans are getting behind, that the fans are excited about seeing, guaranteed C-Rod gonna go out there and get the win. Guaranteed he gonna fraud check him, he gonna make him look bad. That's guaranteed. However, this is Andre Feely, and Andre Feely's been around for a long time. Now, no disrespect to the man, because I love this dude. I love his fighting style when he's on. I love the energy he brings. I love that Bay Area. I don't give a F, and we get ready to go in here and scrap about this dude. But he is the definition of inconsistent, right? Christian Rodriguez, for the most part, is fairly consistent. Once he got his weight cutting issues down, and, they was just like, look, dude, you fighting at featherweight, and there ain't no ifs, ands, or buts. We can't keep doing this bantamweight. He's been a lot more consistent. I will give him that. This is a hard one to call. For this one, man, I'm just going to sit back and enjoy it as a fan. Because I'm a fan of Andre Feely and I want to pick him, but he tends to be so inconsistent. And Christian Rodriguez, he's a guy that now that he's kind of figured everything out, he's not a world beater. I'm not saying anything like that, but he's not a guy that an inconsistent fighter wants to fight because he's tricky. He can grapple, he can wrestle, and when he needs to, he will let his hands go. But he also has faults, you know what I'm saying? He in some fights, he can gas by about the third round, you know what I'm saying? And he can sometimes be a victim of low volume, you know what I'm saying? He can get out volume striked by a lot of opponents. For this one, I don't think I'm going to call a winner. I mean, I'd love to see Andre Feely go out there and get the win. For this one, if you're a betting, if you on Underdog Fantasy, if you on DraftKings, you know what I'm saying? Holla at me, DraftKings. What I would actually go along with here is I would go along with the over. I would go along with whatever you can find. If the over is 2.5 rounds, I would bet on that. You know what I'm saying? If you get lucky and find the over is 1.5, you get into the money. You know what I'm saying? But if you can find that, I think the play on this from a betting perspective is you go for the over. Because a lot of the times, I mean, Andre Feely could definitely be finished, but Christian Rodriguez, once he's kind of gotten in that groove, he's not really a guy that necessarily goes or looks for the finish. So I'd probably go along with the over on this one as far as a winner. The fan in me, I want Andre Feely to win, but it's hard to call. The fan in me is choosing Andre Feely, but, matter of fact, MMA Smart Money says you bet on the over on this fight and cash that one all the way to the bank. You know what I'm saying? That's more beer for you. That's more wings for you at Wingstop. While I'm saying Wingstop, holla at me. I'll take a chicken sponsorship. Holla at me, Wingstop. Nevertheless, that's that fight. What about Miles Johns Oh, Miles Johns making his way back into the octagon. Boom, 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 boom. Against Gene Matsumoto. I don't know, man. I've kind of made a career of fading Miles Johns at every turn. No disrespect to this young dude. He seems like a good guy, but I'm going to fade him again. I got Gene Matsumoto to go out there and get the win. Don't know if he actually will, but a lot of the times you can't go wrong with fading Miles Johns to take a loss. And then finally, on the last fight on the main card, the opening fight of the main card, your boy, Eric Anders, steps in the octagon with Christian Leroy Duncan. Eric Anders, another guy that is constantly going to be inconsistent. And, you know, for his own sake, we hope that he finds some consistency this late in his career. But I'm going to go along with Christian Leroy Duncan. This is a new Christian Leroy Duncan. This is Christian Leroy Duncan that is focused a little bit more on grappling and wrestle defense, takedown defense. He's focused a lot more on holding guys up against the cage and really trying to wear on them and then moving in for his striking. I don't know how this fight's going to play out, but I got Christian Leroy Duncan to go out there and get the win. I honestly think he finishes Eric Anders. I think we're going to get a TKO finish or a knockout in this one. So those are my picks. That's the main card of this UFC Apex card. Not the best, but it is what it is. We got to make do. We trying to make it the Drickus versus Homicide, and it's coming up soon, guys. So let's pull through. Please like, subscribe, comment. Let me know what you think. And once again, I do want to thank you guys for joining me for another episode of Matter of Fact MMA. And I'll check you next time. Peace.